This is the last video that we're going to spend looking at financial math, and we're going to be looking today specifically at sinking funds. And sinking funds are a way of saving for the future. And so that links here to this future value formula that we do get on our formula sheet. Before we look at sinking fund annuities, it's so important to have a good foundation of the vocabulary that gets used around these topics. So we're going to look at these words: inflation, depreciation, book value, and scrap value. Because if you don't understand what these mean, then you're actually going to sit with questions that you don't know how to answer. Okay, inflation is a word that is thrown around a lot these days, and that is basically the general increase in price, or the rate of increase in price of general goods over a period of time. Now, if you're very interested in financial maths and you're going to take one of those routes in your future career, you're going to learn things about the Consumer Price Index, which is really the South African indication of how things are going in terms of inflation. Okay, but if you don't plan to have a journey down to a career in finance, that's totally fine. What you will notice is that possibly 3 years ago, you paid 12 Rand for a loaf of bread, and now you may be seeing that the cost of that loaf of bread is 16 or 17 Rand. And so that is inflation, just a general increase of prices, and you can work that out as a percentage. So that's always going to be given to you as a percentage, and inflation is always given as an annual percentage. Okay, that's how we work things out in terms of our sinking fund questions. Okay, and then the opposite of inflation is depreciation. So where inflation is the value of something going up, depreciation is what happens once something starts to be used. So you've heard of people buying a car, and the minute that they drive it off the showroom floor, it is suddenly worth less than when it was a brand new car. So depreciation is a reduction in the value of an item over a period of time, and that's usually due to wear and tear. So nothing is made to last anymore, and you can expect that depreciation is going to be part of your life, and that's actually why we have sinking funds. So we set sinking funds up to replace items that are going to depreciate over time. On your formula sheet, you have two depreciation formulae. Okay, the one that goes with the simple interest, that one is known as straight line depreciation, and then the other one with the n and the exponent, that is known as reducing balance, and that is definitely the more common one, is the reducing balance formula. But just so you know, you could be asked either one, and again, it's about just knowing the terminology, because I really want you to be able to answer all the questions that come your way. Now, as things depreciate, they have a book value. In other words, if your accountant were to walk into your business, what would he or she say your equipment is worth at that given time? So that is the value of an item after a given time of depreciation. And then lastly, we have the scrap value, and basically that's when an item reaches the end of its lifespan. So it's no longer good for anyone. Then we work out what is the book value of the item at that point in time. So book value, let's say you have a computer, and the computer in general is going to reach the end of its lifespan in 4 years' time, and you just want to know after 1 year, what's my computer worth now? That would be book value. But after 4 years, when the computer is really at the end and you need to replace it, that's when you look at scrap value. Okay, these are important terms as we head now into sinking funds. So sinking funds work on this future value annuity formula, and what happens is, if someone buys a new item, for example, let's say you work in a butchery and you have bought yourself some fancy equipment for cutting meat. Then what you do is you realize there's a lifespan to that equipment, and so you set up, from the day that you buy, you set up this future value annuity called a sinking fund, and you say, I know that in 10 years' time I'm going to need to replace this equipment, so let me start saving now. Let's look at some examples. Simon buys a truck for his business. The truck depreciates at 11% per annum on a reducing balance. Okay, so remember we looked at the two types. Reducing balance is the one that goes with compound. Let's make a little note there, compound. Okay, the inflation rate for the new truck is 6% per annum, and the truck will be sold secondhand in 10 years' time. Okay, so see, we've got a depreciation rate and we've got an inflation rate. The key with these questions is to read very carefully. Okay, in 10 years' time, it's going to be sold, so we can assume then that that's going to be its scrap value. Okay, at least scrap value to the company. Okay, 2 questions here, and then we're going to carry on to a second part of this scenario. Okay, it says, first of all, calculate the second-hand value of the truck in 10 years' time. So now we need to consider the fact that if I want to sell, or if Simon wants to sell his truck, he's going to sell it for less than he bought it for. So he's going to use the depreciation formula, which we can get from the formula sheet. Okay, and we can then say A is equal to P, 1 minus IN. I want to know what will it be worth in the future. Currently, the truck is worth 850,000. So that's the P value. Okay, we want to know A is equal to 850,000 Rand, 1 minus the depreciation rate there is 11%. So 1 minus 11%. Okay, depreciation is per annum. I shouldn't write percent there. 11 over 100, that's where the percentage comes in. And it's for 10 years. So let's pop that into our calculator. So 850,000 multiplied by 1 minus this interest rate for 10 years. And that gives us an answer there in Rand of 265,044 Rand and 62 cents. Remember, 2 decimal places there because we are working with money. Okay, so it definitely depreciates a lot, but I'm sure he's going to find a buyer for that amount of money. Okay, keep this in the bank because we are going to need it later. When he sets up his sinking fund, he's actually not going to need this because he can bank on the fact that he's going to be making 265,000 Rand by selling his truck. Okay, now they say, what will the same truck cost in 10 years' time? So Simon is getting ready to sell the old and replace the new one. So we're going to need another formula now. Okay, this time the truck is appreciating, so we're okay. A, we want to know what is it going to be in the future, is equal to, presently it's 850,000 Rand, 1 plus. The truck is, the inflation rate is 6%, so 6 over 100, that's an annual thing, and it's for 10 years. Okay, let's pop that into our calculator. So we're still going to have the 10 years in our formula, but the interest rate is going to change now, 6%, and it's no longer the subtraction formula, it's the addition formula. So there, I've retyped it, and we are looking at exorbitant amounts of money here. This same truck in 10 years' time is going to cost us more than 1.5 million Rand. Okay, but let's move on to see what happens in terms of Simon's sinking fund plans. Okay, I'm going to jot the 2 answers down here for question 1 and question 2 because they are going to come into play. Let's carry on with Simon's scenario. So he wants to set up a sinking fund, good man, because to suddenly have 1.5 million Rand is very difficult. It's better to save. Okay, it looks like he's got a good interest rate, so it earns 7.5% interest per annum, compounded monthly, and the first payment will be made 1 month after the purchase of the current truck. So remember when we looked at that annuity formula, we said that's right. You take out your investment or you take out your loan and then you start paying at the end of that month. So that's cool. We can use the formula as is in terms of this question. Now it says here, question 3, how much money will Simon need in the sinking fund after 10 years? Okay, so that's where we need to now use these answers that we got for question 1 and question 2. So what we know is that thanks to inflation, Simon is going to need 1.5 million, 1,522,220 and 54 cents in the account. Okay, but fortunately he is going to sell his current truck for the 265,044 rand and 62 cents. So now we can see how much he'll need in total in terms of saving. So he doesn't need to save the full 1.5 million because he is still going to sell that other truck for its scrap value. Okay, so there we have it. He needs 1,257,175 rand and 92 cents in his sinking fund after 10 years. Okay, and now they say determine his fixed monthly installments for the sinking fund. In other words, Simon wants to know how much he needs to save every month. Okay, it's a saving, so it's a future value. What helps once we've got our formula down is that we just start to fill in the bits of information that we have. Okay, so if the future value, we actually know what that is. We've just worked it out there, 1.257 million. Okay, then X, that's the thing they want us to work out. Because look here, they said they want us to determine his fixed monthly installment. So that's the X value in the equation. Okay, I is the interest rate. So let's jot that down somewhere. I, in terms of the sinking fund, he's earning 7.5%. So percent is going to divide by 100, compounded monthly. So divided by 1,200 there. And then N is the number of time periods. So N, it's 10 years times by 12 months. So 120 installments that he's going to make in total. Okay, so now we are at a point where we can substitute into our formula the future value 1,257,175,92 is equal to X multiplied by 1 plus the interest there, 7,5 over 1,200 to the power of 120 minus 1, all divided by 7,5 over 1200. Okay, so if you remember back to our video where we learned firstly about annuities, we saw that if we wanted X, the easiest thing to do would be to divide by this whole thing on this side and do the same on that side. So for the sake of space, I'm not going to write the whole division thing, but on our calculator we're going to type in this 1.2 million thing and we're going to divide by this amount here. Let's see what we get. Okay, so once we pop that into our calculator, then here on the right hand side of the equation we'll just be left with X because we've divided both sides by this 1 plus 7,5 what, and we've done it here too, divided by 1 plus 7,5 over, okay, etc. So now we are left with this amount here, and that is not too bad for Simon, 7,065 rand and 55 cents. So he needs to end up with more than R1 million, but he's got 10 years to do it, and he's going to make 12 payments in a year. So 120 payments in total means that he needs to be putting away 7,000 rand a month. Okay, and this is such a beautiful example of why people do set up sinking funds. Because if he doesn't plan and he doesn't save what seems like bite-sized chunks here of 7,000 rand a month, then what's going to happen is by the time that his truck is ready to give up, okay, he's going to be able to sell it for the 265,044 rand and 62 cents, but he's not going to have this 1.2 million just ready to go. And so that's why Simon has planned ahead and he has set up a sinking fund. Okay, very important when you deal with these sinking fund questions is to remember that you don't need to save. This is where I see students making a lot of mistakes. You don't need to save the full 1,522,000 etc. amount of money. You can deduct this scrap value amount and then you work out how much your monthly installments will be.